Hey, peeps, it's Sarah Jane from Access Your True Nature, and I'm just popping in here quickly before I dash off to another event to speak a little bit about fear and where you maybe are not showing up in your life because you're afraid of rejection, or you're afraid to be ridiculed or look stupid, and yet you know that you've got something really valuable that you know you need to show up in, and that your work's important. And that's really the heart of the work that I do, is to empower you to create that offering or work or piece of art or piece of music or program, because it's a contribution in the world. And that the longer that you keep, hi Jody Friedman, hello Kelly Heath, the longer that you keep dimming your light and the longer you keep procrastinating, the longer that you keep the people that are looking for you waiting for you. And I really like to be that fierce medicine and that arse kicker for you, because I have a stake in the ground to get your work out in the world and to stop letting your fears and your assumptions get in the way of that. And it's not really okay, is it, to not show up and share your voice and your message and your gifts with the world. Hi Fahid, is it Fahad? Nice to see you here. Yeah, so I remember a couple of years ago, and maybe you've heard the story before, but where I was really in a place that the thought of going to a networking event would make me sick to my stomach, and I would talk myself out of it because I didn't want to be in another room filled with people that are all wanting to be seen and all wanting to connect, and none of them are really very present or open to be seen or felt. And it's a very vulnerable space, and you can almost cut it with a knife. It's so it's just so in the room, where people are there but they're not really connecting, and they're just kind of moving through each other. And I still feel that come up for me every time I kind of venture out. There goes someone's alarm. But what I do know is that when I did feel the courage to just be more visible and just to show up in spaces and be willing to be surprised, to be willing to be open for the people that I was meant to connect with, to connect in the world. Hello, Francois. I was at your event yesterday. And yeah, so it's like when you can show up, and even when you're uncomfortable, and you just honor that you're willing to be there anyway in the discomfort, I think that you do start to attract the people that are aligned with what you have to offer and what you have to share. And most of the time, like I again experienced last night, just holding that space for people, you don't actually have to say anything. It's just about them feeling heard and seen, because they're really, really frustrated. And I met a woman last night who was in that sort of space of being really, really nervous and feeling out of her depth, and she said to me, wow, you really give a shit about people, and you really listen. And she thanked me for just giving her the courage to show up in a different space and honor that part of her that was afraid of being rejected or judged or feeling attacked, and just honor that they have something to say, that she had something to say, and she didn't have to worry about that anymore. Because, let's face it, judging other people, it's a human condition. We're all judging on some level at some point, and people are going to judge you. And I don't really want that to stop you from contributing what only you can because of it. And I know I'm speaking to a lot of you. Hi, Corleen, another amazing, talented, creative, who like me, we are a little bit perhaps more introvert than we are extrovert, and we are highly sensitive, and we are empathic. And that is a gift, to be able to hold a space for people to be felt really deeply, but not to get sucked into their reality. Hey, hello, Andrew Court, amazing videographer. If any of you are interested, I've got some exciting news coming for you on that. But I digress a little bit. So fear, what was I talking about? Fear. Yeah, you got to remember that what you perceive about yourself, the projections that we put out, the assumptions that you think people are judging you, or perhaps that you're going to make a fool of yourself or feel feel stupid, that it's not really an excuse anymore, is it, to give your power away for people, or to people that can't see you or can't receive you, and that's their stuff, that it's not yours. So please don't let fear get in the way of showing up and putting yourself out there, and just being real and raw and vulnerable in it. And as my own mentor often reminds me, we don't need more assholes in the world. We really, really don't. We need more people like you to share your voice and your message and your talents and your gifts as only you can. And give yourself the space, give yourself the breathing room to attract the people that can hear you. You can't call your own people forward if you're not solid in your own presence. And you have to move out of the fear of failing, and remember that you have a bigger responsibility, and it's bigger than your own inner saboteur voice. And when there's the most beautiful bird in my tree. I can't remember what it's called. Kakamfas, I think you call them in Afrikaans. It's like you have to be willing to project your voice and know that you can't be self-absorbed in that. You're here to give back in a bigger way, and you can't do that if you're not anchored in your message and you are not able to express what it is that you're here to give. Hello, Roxana. So tell me if this is making sense. I know I often get onto these, and I never promise they're going to be short anymore, because it kind of comes through me, and I tend to jump around a little bit, and because it's sometimes it's not me, and I think sometimes we have to move our prefrontal thinking brain out of the way. And those of you that are more creative and more expressive on that part of your brain get this. But just remember, people can't find you if you're not showing up, and if you're not there, if you're not present in your path and your purpose, and you are not clear in who you are in service to, they can't find you. They just can't. And I don't always get a lot of likes or comments or views on my blogs and on my Facebook lives like this. But whether I'm impacting 100 people or 10 million people, it really doesn't matter, does it? Because I hear about it. I hear from people who tell me that they listen to these little rantings every day. Hi, Kathleen. And that it's if what I've said somehow helps them in some way to step up and finish their blog, or get out and stop hiding behind their computers, if they walk away with something, even if they never work with me or I don't know them directly, that's what I stand for. And I know that my work is being felt and impacted by people who do sometimes get on a call with me, or tell me in a private message that they've changed something that they were doing, or the way that they're being, because of these little Facebooks. Then I'll keep going, because people need to hear your voice. And this is bigger than you. It's bigger than all of us. And I put myself out there every day, just like this, even though I'm uncomfortable, just to honor myself and know that I'm going to judge the crap out of me, or wonder what I said. So I never go back and listen to what I've said, because if I did, I'd probably delete all of them, right? Because that inner perfectionist and that inner saboteur would tell me, who do I think I am? And what's the point? Because maybe it's just all for you, and I think there's a part of us that needs to own that as well, is that we do show up, and we do journal, and we do speak, and we do get into those real, raw, vulnerable places like Facebook Lives to clear a pathway and remove obstacles out of our own life. I think it's by going into the obstacles that we actually grow. So, I used to be petrified of failing at anything, and maybe you can relate to that. I mean, I remember, and I've told this story before as well, about how I think I was about maybe 12 or 13, and the local radio station, we only had one in the town that I lived, used to have this like phone in, and you could win something if you just answered a question and you got it right. And it was probably an LP or in those days, or a book or something. And I was so excited because you'd hang on the line and hang on the line, and sometimes an hour would go through in the competition. You never get through. And the one day I got through, and I will never forget. The question was, what is the largest river in Rhodesia? Because I lived in Zimbabwe at the time, or Rhodesia as it was called back then. And my nerves took over, and this whole thing about suddenly dawning on me that the whole town was listening to this, and if I got this wrong, I was going to be ridiculed. And of course I got the answer wrong, and of course everybody laughed at me and told me how stupid I was, and how could I not know that the biggest river in Zimbabwe was the Zambezi. And I think I said, and I know I said it was the Limpopo, and I was so ashamed. And I made a promise that day that I was never, ever, ever going to be seen as stupid. And then I went into, but I don't know everything. And stupidity now, I didn't know it back then, was really just cutting off the awareness of what you do know, and also being willing to ask questions, and be willing to not know, and have that beginner's mind. And, being seen as stupid back then brought up a lot of shame. Because I got this question wrong, and I had everybody in town, because everybody knew everybody, laughing at me and telling me how ridiculously stupid I was. And that shaped me for a long time, to not be able to ask questions, because I'd be overcome by this huge anxiety and this panic of having attention on me. Thank you, Kathleen. And having all eyes on me, and that performance anxiety of, oh my God, I never ever will ask another question again, for fear of being made wrong for it, or judged as stupid, or have people say, I told you so, or I don't ever want something to not work out. And I think that's the big part of our controller aspect of being human, is that we want to think that we have some control over how things roll out, or how we're received, or how we show up. And I don't ever want to have to admit that I was wrong. Now I don't give a shit, or like the woman said to me last night, I care so much, and I say this to my clients, I care so much that I don't care, because I have to get my own inner saboteur voices and my own projections and assumptions out of the way, in order to be able to hold space for people to feel held, and to create that sense of safety for themselves. So if you've ever sort of been holding back because you're afraid that you're going to be judged, or have people laugh at you, or because you don't want to feel that scared again, just invite yourself to soften your heart enough to hold the space for that child part of you that is still stuck in some of that story of perhaps a bad experience like I had. Because, life's not like that. We want everything to unfold perfectly, don't we? But it doesn't always show up the way that you imagined. And a lot of time, if we just lower our barriers in our heart, and we just let ourselves be seen and heard for the gift that we are in that moment, a lot of things start to change. And I'm a recovering perfectionist. I don't know if we ever get out of wanting to have everything perfect. But my own years of self-mastery and working with the shadows, and working with the nervous system, and getting people out of that place of fight, flight, freeze, where we're constantly switched on in that hyper-vigilant state of, oh my gosh, who's going to judge me? We get to start to resolve, and we get to start laying new neural pathways over those old areas of trauma, because that was traumatic for me. Being laughed at on national radio was very traumatic, and when we start to tell a different story and see every failure as a gift, that's where the beauty of showing up and speaking in your truth can actually start to come through. So reframing perceived failures is a great way of contributing to not only your own growth, but the growth of, or the evolution of being human. And I fail at something most days. I mess up, I make mistakes. Remember, a mistake is actually just misdirected energy that you have taken because you have gone into the conclusion that things have to look a certain way. So I love messing around with words, which are just spellings. They carry an incredible amount of energy on them. And what if there are no mistakes? They're just detours on your journey through life, and going from A to B. Oftentimes we miss out on this bumpy adventure called life. So allow yourself to flip any kind of situation that comes up, and know that, you know, I completely read that the wrong way, but what is the gift in that, and how can I grow through that experience, is a really good question to ask. And I spend hours and hours sometimes writing articles or blogs. These are totally unscripted, so I like them a lot more because they're uncensored. You know, you can't go back and edit it a million times. But if I just sort of sit down and I get really quiet and maybe do meditation or expand my zone and get my energy to be as big as the infinite beingness of who I am, my mind slows down and I stop fidgeting, and then I'm able to just lean into that space of whatever is going to come through is going to come through. And I don't have to go into distracting myself by resisting what is. I can just be present to that. And you know, sometimes that looks like scrolling through Facebook feed, or I'll go swimming until my lungs are bursting and my arms are burning, and yet I don't really swim the 400 meters in the time I set myself. Or I send an email pitching an exciting idea or a collaboration or a coaching project that I have, and I receive thanks but no thanks, or worse, crickets. But I don't like failing, and maybe you don't either. You know, but I think to just embrace the growing pains of what that mistake gives us, to take imperfect action rather than getting shut down and disillusioned, is a beautiful place to be. And it's this experience of life, so that rejection or the failures of what could happen, the what if game that we played a couple of weeks ago, really pales in comparison to the pain of holding back your gifts, or not showing up, or not just speaking your truth, where we go into shutting ourselves down in shame. Because for me, that hurts more than the fear of getting it wrong or making a mistake or not being present to myself. So you have no idea of the power and the impact of your word, or your creation, or your painting, Corleen, or a piece of music that you're going to create, or that program that you want to get out there, or the people that you want to speak to at an event or on stage or whatever it is. You have no idea how you're going to impact the people that are going to be there. And I just think that if you don't believe that you're here to contribute as a conscious light worker, as an empath, as an intuitive, as a creator, and recognize that the world needs you, you're withholding your gifts from other people, and that to me is quite abusive. And you know, I'll be one of those people that will always show up and help you to navigate through the overwhelm and the confusion, and have your impact be felt by seeing a different perspective of how you are showing up or how you're judging yourself, so that you have the courage to go out and do the work with clarity and the purpose beyond all the projections and rejections and expectations and separations and decisions and judgments and conclusions that you have about what it could or couldn't be. And you know, I think you also know that in some way or another, you can't really escape mistakes or failure, because you're choosing to live your life in a way that leaves you wide open to failure, wide open to judgment, wide open to rejection. And I am one of those people, for those of you who know me, you know that already, that I refuse to sit on the sidelines of my life or your life and not say or do or go for things simply because I don't want to fuck up. You know, can you relate to that? You know, I think J.K. Rowling, and I love her, and I love the alchemy of imagination and experience. And she said that it's impossible to live your life without failing at something. So unless you live so carefully or cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default anyway. Not choosing is still a choice. It's still an action. So you may as well choose what works for you rather than what doesn't. And I've spent a lot of time listening and talking to people about their lives and what they want to create. And the one thing I hear over and over again is that they're scared of failing, except they don't quite come right out and say that they're scared of failing. Instead, they sort of tell me about how stuck they are in their lives and all the objections and all the yes buts, and how it's nearly impossible for them to change and do things, or as we say in South Africa, but I can't. And I say, how can you not? What is it going to be worth to you to not show up? And I hear about how they've tried before and how they can't do it because their kids are still little, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the money or the confidence or the motivation of of actually getting things going and building that consistent action every single day. And for me, it's just like, it's building that mental muscle, but it's also building the heart muscle again and letting the barriers fall down from your heart. Hello, Megan. I'm so lucky I have all these amazing women that are tuning in with me today from all over the world. So, it's always fear, isn't it? It's the fear of failing. It's the fear of fucking up. It's the fear of being made to look stupid, or be vilified or judged as a screw up, or that somehow your work isn't making a difference in the world. And I think we all intrinsically just want better. We want to show up bigger and better than we were the day before. We want to give more generously than we did the day before. We just want better. And we want everything to be more easeful, more graceful, have more flow, don't we? And we want everybody to actually just like us. That's a human condition. And I was going to go on a side tangent on that, because I heard somebody today talking about how, we need to get over our fear of technology, and because everything's becoming more automated and everything is going online, and we want to automate funnels. And to me, I just kind of felt really heavy in that, because I'm really into high touch, and I want to feel people, and I want to see them, and I want to touch them. And I think that is part of our devolution, actually, as a species. And I think our very survival as human beings depends on us getting back in touch with our hearts and actually making more heart to heart and in person connections, because we're all so touch starved with all the automation. It's like hanging on the line and you get some computer saying, please be patient, you're number 69 in the queue, and you got to push one button, and we're not touching people, we're not making contact, and we're multi-sensory beings. And science has proved this over and over again. Babies that are left in nurseries or orphanages where their bottles are propped up and they're not having human touch, they're dying. And this is where the kangaroo effect of putting preemies skin on skin actually thrive, because we are mammals. We have a human body that is part animal. And as mammals, we need touch. So if we're hiding behind automation, if we're hiding behind technology, if we're not actually touching people, how can we ever create the resources and the money? Because at the end of the day, money comes through people. So, we want to feel comfortable. 99% of the time, we're uncomfortable. And we want everything we turn our hand to be a guaranteed success. We want the predictability of that, because that's part of being human as well. We want to be healthy, but we don't want to get our backside off the couch and out of the Pringles to actually go to gym and exercise, or to eat a clean, live, healthy, plant-based diet. We want to feel calm and fulfilled without actually having to consider the question that might just point us in the right direction. And we want to make a difference, but we're too afraid to get out behind our computer screen and actually meet real living people who are also starving for touch, starving for that sort of heart connection that I really believe in. I think the greatest separation sickness on the planet right now, where divorce is so high and depression is at its all-time high and obesity is at its all-time high, the way that we get back to being human is to remember our humanity. And I think fear reminds us of that. I think fear can be a beautiful friend, an adversary to get us back into the action of reaching out and touching people. And Megan, I know you will agree with me that horses are such an incredible teacher for us, because they have such a huge heart field, and you can't but feel grounded and centered and alive in your truth, in your vulnerability when you're with a horse, because they pick up the lies when we're not being present and we're not being congruent in how we're showing up. So don't try and bullshit a horse, and because they will pull you right back into the present moment. I think all animals have that beautiful capacity to show us where we're going into the fear of all the experiences and the archives of all the trauma that we've had, or we're projecting so far into the future of what if, and trying to extrapolate all the exit strategies of it. Well, if this plan A doesn't work, I have to have plan B and C and D worked out. That we're missing the gift of being alive and present in this very moment, of connecting from that space of presence. And I don't know, I think we don't want to have to really try at these things, which is why so many people give up after the first try of doing something outside of their comfort zone. And we're so used to choosing to live in a moderated, hold back way, and we're tiptoeing around our lives, and we're saying, you know what, don't wake the failure up, don't wake fear up, let's not wake those shadows up, because it's kind of nice being in the nirvana, which is a fantasy, because you're not present to create your life. So I want to live in a world where people that are highly sensitive, that are highly in tune with feeling everything, and are so in touch with their vision that they will do more than just try. And I'm so grateful to have such a beautiful community of people that are out of the trying, because trying already means you've made some conclusion that it's not going to work, and they're going, what if, and knowing that your vision, what you stand for, has to be bigger than the internalized fear of what you think might happen. And go beyond your comfort zone, push yourself to get uncomfortable, and stop making it an excuse that you can't. I have to go through this myself all the time, and I have to keep remembering that myself, because staying stuck and not doing the things that you want to do is far, excuse my language, fucking worse than failing will ever be. So can we just be all right with failing? It's Fabulous Friday, not Fearful Friday. So can we just invite failure in for the ride, for the adventure of it, and also remember that the kidneys and the aspects of the brain that are related to the kidney energy, that's your vital life force energy. It's our vitality comes from our kidneys. We come in with this beautiful vital life force on our kidneys and our kidney meridians and that aspect of the brain. And a lot of the times, based on our childhood experience, when we didn't have our own strong vagal tone and we were borrowing the vagal tone of our parents, and if some of you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a whole another ramble on my YouTube video about how to strengthen your vagus nerve, which is basically, in short terms, the intuitive process of the wandering nerve that wanders all through your body. And when we're small and we're learning and we're experimenting and we're excited because we're just about to crawl, and we turn around and we see our mother's face going like this because you're taking your first crawl, or you're taking your first steps, and you look back to check, am I okay, am I safe? And we look at the expression on our parent or our primary caregiver as the cue as to whether we're safe or not safe. And we misidentify and misinterpret that excitement as something to be afraid of. So just know that that's a really good question when you're feeling the butterflies and the healthy fear. And I'm talking about a rational fear here, which is that existential fear of the kidneys that tells us when we're in danger and where our body wants us to keep it alive. I'm talking about that irrational fear of, I'm really, really excited, and we misidentify that as fear. So I hope that makes sense. But you know, what if we can just today go forward into our lives, into the rest of the day, if you're just waking up in the Northern Hemisphere, or if your day's sort of coming to an end and you're wondering, you know, what adventure can I have, and what grand and glorious plans are going to come through me as you go about your day. Just look at is this excitement or is this fear? And let's start doing more from that place. Let's start living more from that place. Can we do that? Give me some hearts, give me some loves, give me some hell yeses if you're willing to go beyond the fear. And here's a couple of questions, and if you have paper, you might want to write this down. But these are some no-nonsense questions that can really start to get you into inspired action, even though you might be afraid. Is give fear a voice and then go anyway. But what if, what would be the most brave, rebellious, adventurous, unexpected decision? And I'm not talking about a decision as a conclusion. You could ask what choice. I kind of like choice more than deciding, because we're sometimes also programmed into saying, oh, well, if you choose, you know, if you're going to make that decision, then you have to stay and you have to stick to it, and you have to beat the odds and go through with force rather than choice, which is like, well, what if I can choose in every 10-second increment? So interesting point of view. I'm choosing that now, and as long as it's expansive and light, I'm going to keep following it. And when it starts to get contractive, that knowing that you can choose again to to get back on track to your inner pilot light, your North Star. So what would be the most exciting, brave, unexpected, surprising choice that you can make right now in your life, that if you chose it, would change everything in a good way for you? And anything that doesn't allow that, can we just bring up all the energy that might be sticking you? There you go. And just let it go. Dissolve, transmute, destroy, and uncreate it all. And question 2 is, what is one thing that you could do right now that you're not doing, that if you did it on a regular basis, knowing who you're being, because we have to be in order to do, and that's the anchor, the stake, your vision, your true nature, your essence, that would make a huge difference in how you're creating your life going forward. And here's another one for you. So other than time or money, what I want more of in my life is, and fill in the blank. Hello, Nazreen, all the way from Botswana. Nice to see you, honey. So other than time or money, what is one thing? What is your big what? What is your desire, your core desire, that you're not going to let fear stop you from having? And then a side note to that is what that you could ask is like, what is truly worth doing in your life right now? Because remember, this isn't about deserving. You know, it's your birthright to have an abundant life. It's your birthright to be deeply happy, and yet we won't choose it because it's your birthright. And that's very insane. But when you go into the counterintuitive energy of that, it's not about deserving anything. It's about looking at what you're committed to as getting the result in your life that you want rather than the one that you don't. It takes the same amount of energy In fact, it takes more when you're in resistance to believing that you're worthy. So what's truly worth doing in your life right now, regardless of whether you perceive that to be a success or a failure? And I reckon the probability of you actually sitting down right now or after this Facebook Live and actually taking the time, honoring yourself enough to take the time to gain some insight into those questions is probably pretty low. And that's just a human condition. It's a human thing. We know what we want, we know what we desire, and we know what we need, not from a place of lack, but we choose from lack and scarcity all the time. And that's why we don't do it. So let's get really honest here. Because the likelihood of you taking action, even if you did get some clarity or some insight, or you got an answer from that, is teeny tiny. It's really tiny. Especially, no, I'm slurring. Especially if you've not got a lot of time, or the thought of change scares you. And we're living in very unpredictable times, where everything is changing really quickly, and we perhaps are feeling like we need to drop a new anchor, really go back and visit what we stand for and what we want. What is it that you want is always a question that I ask, and not from what other people want for you. Let's see, my battery's about to die. But really from, I am afraid in this moment. Hello, Margot. So, dig deep under the roots. This is what root cause resolution is all about, and that's what I stand for, is that until you actually get really clear and identify and name the things that you're truly afraid of. So what's underneath the fear that you are pretending that you're afraid of, and all the lies that you've put on top of that in order to try and make them true, to validate that you need to be really afraid right now. And look at what's keeping you stuck. Because until you change those unconscious commitments, and they are unconscious, that's why they're in your subconscious. In fact, most of the time they're in your supermind, which we really very rarely have access to unless we're in a deep meditative state all the time, or unless you are in workshop, which is a mindscape technique of living in that expanded space all the time, of knowing that all my needs are met and that it is an abundant world. You're not going to believe that until if your reality up to this point has been that it's not, that there is scarcity, that struggle, that you know what pain feels like, and nothing changes unless you start to resolve some of these unconscious commitments and these mindsets that are keeping you in this place of perpetuating what you don't want. And it's just like, who do you know that someone who can support you in understanding why you're spinning your wheels at work, or rolling your eyes at the whole wide world, or wanting to sort of bang your head against the nearest brick wall. And most importantly, someone who will help you make the changes in your life that don't have you running for the nearest exit, or giving up on your dreams, or quitting on something just because it's not getting the traction or the result that you perceived it to, because you're still living into what that looks like. And this is where putting things out imperfectly and giving yourself the crash test dummy run is the best place to be, because it excites you and it lifts you up, and you give. The more you give, the more you grow, the more you gain. So here's the deal, because my battery is about to die, is if you'd like me to personally help you get out of your own way and stop making excuses, so that you can start doing the things that you want to do in life, and that really light you up, and this is your talents and your natural capacities, things that you can do in your sleep backward and you could give them away for free, I would be honored to support you. And it's on me, because in my 15 plus years of being a medicine woman, of being an intuitive coach and a mentor, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people. Some of you are here. Thank you for being here. I've really come to realize that there is no quick fix. There is no magic pill. That is the mastery. It's the experience of being in physical form. And if you're looking for a 10-step plan to get people feeling lighter or more settled and more focused than they have ever been, sorry, I'm not one that promises something that isn't possible. Because it takes guts, and it takes your commitment to showing up and doing the work, and to resolve the inner landscape of the shadow and dig in and get really honest with yourself, and also having a willingness to have the beginner's mind, to make mistakes, to get out of your own way and get really, really curious, to really ask yourself, from one of my favorite poems, tell me what it is that you want. What is it? Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life, and I will be happy, because it's what I love to do, and I'm pretty good at connecting the dots and seeing the patterns from an intuitive perspective, but also through the mastery of what it takes to run a sustainable, expansive, conscious business. Then book a discovery session with me. And let's get clear on how we can create and close that gap between courage and commitment. Okay? So wherever you are, have a happy Friday, and post your comments and questions. Let me know where you kicked fear of failure to the curb and did so by actually acknowledging the fear that was there in the first place, and then making your stand bigger than that, because this isn't about you. And remember, the world isn't waiting for you, for someone like you. The world's waiting for you and what only you have to give to the world. Thank you for being with me on this Friday. Make it fabulous. Enjoy your weekend wherever you are, and post your comments and questions. Let me know what's coming up for you and how I can support you. And as I said, if you've been sitting on the fence for a while and you're wondering how or what it would be like to work with me, book a clarity breakthrough session with me, and let's get on Skype and let's create your personal prescription so that you can stand in your medicine and share your precious gifts with the world. All right. Love you guys. Bye. Mwah.